I do have to admit that I do love me a really good gas blowback rifle. The main key factor that we expect from gas blowback, which is known for doing it very well, especially for the milsimmers out there, is the immersion. And that immersion does come in handy when it comes to helping out with training for real steel, as it does the same thing as using the same type of training. 30 round magazines, the bolt catch has to be locked to the rear, sent forward home, and then you can keep using it and cycle through. It is a very good, useful tool when you want to help train and not spend as much money downrange going to spend your rounds. But also, I do have to admit as well, the MWS does come out in that factor of being a well-known platform. But thanks to Jonathan on this comment, I have to also bring up is right here, is there any improvements that we can do to help update the MWS system to be more better in a certain aspects? But is there? And I will say this is yes, there are. So why don't we talk before we do anything for this Tech Work Tuesday, which is during the time of recording, ending up being on a Friday. Let's talk about a couple key factors that we're gonna have to look into the gas blowback platform to help improve, and a couple parts that would help out, especially in this point in time right now, is during the winter time. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another episode of Airsoft Master. And today we're going to be talking about is a couple key factors that we need to look out for, and also some parts that we can help improve or increase that performance that we can during an important season for the most notorious enemy to gas blowback rifle known to Earth, being cold. And again, this is the perfect time frame where we're talking about is the MWS platform. Is there ways we can improve that? And what are some key factors we need to look out for to help use that during the winter season? So again, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and comment down below, especially to my gas blowback community. Please write down if I'm forgetting anything, and also if there's any parts that you would recommend in regards of help better performance during this cold season. Even though I live in California, yes, I understand, but do help us out, as this would help improve anything, and especially for people going out there on vacation to go play Airsoft. Hey, help us out here as we move on from there. And if you're looking for products like these, do check it out at airsoftmaster.com. But for now, let's go ahead and get into the video. Now, let's picture this. It is June or July, and you have your gas blowback rifle, which we talk about is the perfect immersion. Now, when it comes to what we know about gas blowback is, gas blowback loves the heat. It will always expand inside your magazine. Has a tendency to joule creep because of how much gas you can put and expands when it's very, very cozy, such as like a 76 degrees all the way up to the 80s, that perfect temperature that would perform all the way through. But it is not June. It is not even July. It is now December. It is cold. At a point where, if I remember from living in sunny California, the lowest temperature that we saw last night as I was playing at Tac City, being the lowest at 43 degrees. Yes, I know it's not that cold for my East Coast guys, but in the aspect of California, we're cold. Yeah, I even have my hoodie on, which I always do, but either way, let's get to the main focus. It is cold enough for California, for the gas blowbacks to notice some things. Mainly for me, couple key features that we need to check out. So what are the key features that I do look for? What would help improve your gas blowback functionality and cycle rate? At the same time, here are some parts that I would recommend when it comes to getting into the winter season. So let's start with the first thing is, number one, what is the temperature out there as of right now? With colder temperature, it's a main factor of what we notice is it changes your whole situation on how the cycle rate is for your gas blowback, and a lot of things are the main issues in between. For example, the colder it gets, what do we know about gas in typical science? The gas tends to condense in colder temperature. meaning we're going to have less gas, and notice that it's not going to perform as well as where heat causes the expansion of the gas, and then it does magical things that we see done to our gas blowback rifles, where our FPS would fluctuate and our joules. But what are some key things that we can fix in regards of temperature, and also that gets to the next factor? Well, what type of gas are you using? As for example, each gas has its own pressure. As what we noticed that from here with the Jack Precision Race gas, we're noticing that we do have is 100 PSI, around the 120. Now, there are other things that we can use, such as Puff Dyno, which is a little bit more, and it helps out a lot during the wintertime with performance. There are even higher pressures, such as like the high power of the Puff Dyno, or Swiss Arms, where being the 150 PSI. And the most notorious one that we know from gas blowback is, yes, there is also propane. But why is it different in regards to situations? Well, the colder it is, maybe the more pressure would help out with the cycle rate itself. And for one thing is, that does help out in increasing your better chances of gas efficiency, and at the same time, the chances of it cycling through. The third factor that we need to talk about is what parts did you put into your gas blowback rifle? Now, for my stock purists of the MWS, this is where you do win. I have to admit on this again is, well, you can't go wrong with stock, as it does help out during the colder winters. There's nothing else. It's a lightweight buffer. You have as a stock bolt, and nothing has been changed to the nozzle valve or even the nozzle. And hopefully your compression is still good. But when you modify it, like as this behemoth here, there are many changes out there that can also affect it with your colder weather situation, such as I have a high flow valve. And that is not a good idea when you have this during the winter season. Believe me, I did terrible last night on Tax City. Just trust me. But I did notice, as from one of my colleagues did say, is, well, you are experting out a lot of gas during this cold season. So come to think of it, why don't we change some parts and make it less gassy, I guess you can say. But there are things that we can do to help improve that in the parts. So why don't we go ahead and talk about that, and then we'll do a little experiment in regards to what we have here. Now, the couple parts that we can talk about is, again, so for example, the cycle rate, which we know is going to deal with is buffer springs and the buffer heavyweight, and also what your bolt is and your nozzle, including your valve that's inside the nozzle. All this will affect specifically to how your gun cycles and when it comes to the majority of the gas. 9 times out of 10, if you're using something in the winter time, you want to use a weaker spring or even a less heavier buffer. So maybe going back to the stock, hopefully you kept your parts that will come in handy for mainly when you're using this in the winter time. Faster cycle rate, and it makes it a lot easier to use a less amount of gas to help pull the heavy bolt. Unlike me with the heavy bolt that I do have from the HK416. Another key factor that would help out is even using a low flow valve inside your nozzle, as I bought for the one from Unicorn Airsoft. Shout out to Unicorn Airsoft for making these bad boys. I have to admit, they do come in handy. What that means is, in the situation of what we are now, low flow valves does help restrict as much gas that would be exerted out from going from your magazine to your nozzle and then loading the BB, while high flow would exert the most amount of it and causing what I ended up problems is where it was light strike, wasn't performing well, and ending up with a lot of issues. But either way, why don't we get into the experiment and see what happens when we use different gas, different magazines, and even a different bolt in regards of what we can see in the progress of changing it from a heavy flow to a lower flow situation from changing just the simple things. All right, so with the experiment, let's go ahead and do the most important thing is safety first. Let's go ahead and make sure that nothing's in the chamber. So, chamber check. Chamber's clear. All right. So, as of right now, the office is at a 65 degrees, so it's warm. But as before I started the recording, I did have these in the car And right now on the temperature outside, as I check, we are looking at about, I want to say 40 degrees or 50 degrees right now. So with that time ranges, this is kind of cold. So what we're going to do is we're going to test it out with different types of gases out there. Starting off with is we do have is a stock Tokyo Marine MWS, and to see with cold temperature what would happen if I were to use this, how much gas can we exert and on the gas efficiency comparison to what we did last time. All right, it's full. So let's see how much can be done with a heavy flow valve as well, and at the same time using a stock magazine. Not so good. It's very cold. So we do notice that even with right now at 65 degrees being cold, it's a problem with a high flow valve. Okay, let's see what happens if we were to increase it with maybe a puff dyno and using maybe the higher performance ones like the Guns Modified magazines that we do have here. So let's try that out. Now, I already have filled out the gas blowback with the Guns Modify. Let's see what happens when we need to exert out gas in our Guns Modify. So again, we notice that it's not so good even with the higher performance magazines. So, all right, it goes back to even using a puff dyno, having issues with cold wintertime. So what happens if we use a different type that's actually in the temperature like it's been in the office all along? This has been in here all day with me at the temperature being around, again, 65 degrees. This is with the race gas. Let's see what happens. Okay, room temperature with race gas. Does it change anything? It's a lot better. It's a lot better than we expected overall. So troubleshooting situations is one thing we notice is, again, it's still exerting out a lot more gas and it's only 65 degrees. It's a lot of problems. So where do we move on from here? Well, let's try using either a stock bolt or if you have one, changing it out properly, let's use it with the low flow valve that we can get from Unicorn Airsoft and see what the difference comes from there. Now we lead to the main other second factor that we see is what gas you're using with the higher pressure, and also at the same time is what would happen if we also change the parts. So as you see, this is the original bolt that I did have, which is the Unicorn HAL collaboration alongside with a high flow valve from the nozzle underneath. During the winter time, again, we notice that it causes problems. So inside here, we have is a stock MWS bolt, but with a low flow valve inside from Unicorn. So same mag, this is a Type 89 MWS stock. It's in, let's rack, let's see what happens. Okay, it sounds a lot more normal now. And we do notice that it does have the hard cycle rate. So, okay, we're getting somewhere. So even with colder temperature, we do notice that once we have it with a low flow valve, it's gonna work a lot better. Can we say the same thing about the Guns Modify, even though we're using a low flow? Will this work? Let's find out. Here we go. Let's see. Yeah, so again, it's a lot better. We're using the same type amount of gas, but we do notice that there's a lot more decrease in gas efficiency in comparison to the last test I did for the magazine compatibility as we done before with the stock MWS. If you're wondering what that looks like, I'll go ahead and put that on the link down below. But what about if we do a room temperature as well on the magazine? Alrighty, let's see. Yeah, so it still has its performance where it doesn't really slack back. And at the same time, even with the heavy recoil, as this is the Angry Gun heavy recoil system with this strong buffer weight system on here, it still cycles very well. So in a troubling situation, the low flow valve does help out with the wintertime and colder situations. So I'm able to use the Puff Dyno regular gas or even the race gas on here. Now, what are some things I can also help improve this to be a lot more better? Well, again, we go back to the stock spring. If we go back to stock spring and stock buffer weight, it would help lessen so much of a heavy blowback from either being from a steel to a regular aluminum. That does come in handy to help improve the cycle rate in colder weather. So I hope you guys still have your stuff. If not, another things I can recommend for regards of certain things would be is the Guns Modified Bolt Carrier Group altogether. That would help out in regards of cycle rate. And also the same thing can be said about the Guns Modified Buffer Spring and buffer weight system, where it's polymer and helps out with even the cycle rate on that and gas efficiency. And not gonna lie, that also helps out your rate of fire too. Trust me, I know. It doesn't also stop there, as one thing we need to check for. Another thing is when the parts compatibility we need to look at is gas efficiency and also compression, as what we've seen on here. For example, to do a good compression check, as we need to check, is when we pull our bolt back and we notice that the nozzle is still staying in between the bucking. That is a perfect way to, as if we would check a compression check for an AEG gearbox, where if the piston we push all the way through and put our finger on the cylinder head, does it keep a good pressure of air? Well, this one, same thing. Can it hold its compression while the gas is there and keeping a nice seal between the bucking and the nozzle? Best way to check it, we check it from here. We pull our charging handle back. Nice and slow. There's our nozzle. Does it keep going? Keep going. Oh yeah, that's good compression. The best way to know if we have good compression is when we see that the nozzle is able to hold for a very long time when it gets racked back, and we see a very good seal between, again, the bucking and the nozzle inside your MWS. All of these parts are a main factor when it comes to gas efficiency, your performance as well. So we actually need to check in regards of what is compatible for the parts. For example, this guy, which is Unicorn made and How Industries altogether, it doesn't like Guns Modified nozzles, as it smashes BBs and didn't really do so well on gas efficiency and also feeding. So I was stuck with Unicorn. While the other one, if you remember when I did the review on the Double Eagle, that one does not like Unicorn and it likes more of Guns Modified. As a couple key features we did notice is the nozzle on the top, as I'll put a picture right up here as well. It breaks the top piece of the nozzle and then cause a big problem for the gas efficiency and even performance. Yet for some reason that thing goes like a champ. But I digress. These are the main things we want to do in regards of checking for parts compatibility. And at the same time, going back to sometimes stock does help out for the winter time situations. Now, with all that information, I do hope that this helps you out with during the time to keep playing Airsoft during the holiday season without freezing your gun and hopefully not freezing your butt off for too long trying to troubleshoot it. But if you have any questions, do write a comment down below, as I'll try to help you out during this time. And also, again, if you're looking for products like these, do check it out at airsoftmaster.com. But for this episode, my name's Mike. I'll see you guys till next time, and happy holidays.
This video is brought to you by Airsoft Master.